Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So this is a video I wasn't necessarily anticipating on doing after the old one, because obviously in the one that you would have seen previously, I thought that my Defender was all done, but it turns out that wasn't the case. Needed quite a bit of work doing to it, so we'll get into that in this video. And we're still not out of the woods yet. There's still a bit left to do. Reference the issues that are ongoing. Maybe one of you could even help, I don't know, but yeah, let me tell you a little bit about what's been going on with the old thing. So if you did watch the previous video, you'll know that I had quite a few issues with it overheating, and I thought with changing the thermostat and also doing some trickery with actually a different thermostat, so it opened at a lower temperature, flushing through the radiator, new expansion cap and things like that, that it would have been sorted, but that wasn't the case. So it was better, it was definitely better than what it was, but it certainly wasn't great, because I went to North Devon, I think just for a weekend away, and took the truck and it overheated again. But it didn't leak out of the expansion tank or anything like that, it just overheated and the engine died. And then it wouldn't start again for ages until it cooled down properly, and then eventually got it going again. And then all I was doing is kind of having all the temperature right up in the cab to try and get a lot of the temperature out of the engine bay, and eventually limp it home, so to speak. So went back into the garage and thought, well, the only other thing it could be is maybe the head, as in the head is split, or a head gasket. That's quite a common thing on these 2.4 TDCi engines. And then we started stripping the engine and found out to be a lot worse than that. So I'll put some pictures up in just a second. But it seems that whoever had this previously also had head gasket issues and potentially had the head skimmed a little bit too much. And what that means, of course, is because obviously the head is now a thinner piece of material, the chain can't tension quite as well as it did, and the valves are actually lacking, or slacking, should I say. So the chain was loose and the valves are actually hitting, or the pistons are hitting the valves, if you like. So the actual valve impressions on top of the piston heads. And I thought, well, what do I do? Because I can either rebuild this engine that was in it, the 2.4 that was in it, and hope that that all goes well, or just get a recon engine. And I thought, well, the most efficient way of doing it is just to get a recon engine. So that's what I did. I found a company online, got a recon engine from them. They specialise in doing them for these, and obviously it's the transit engine, so they went into the transits as well. That turned up, had a couple of niggling little issues that I needed to sort out in there. So this here is actually a different engine altogether. It is a 2.4 TDCi, the same, but it is a full rebuild, a recon engine. So that was all fun and games trying to get that fitted, because obviously it's not a small job, it's quite a big job to do. I mean, the good thing is with the Defender, you can take the bonnet off altogether, lift the thing out the top. We had to strip all the auxiliaries off, so it came as like a bare unit, so we had to do all the water pumps and oil pumps and starter and all that to be bolted from the old one onto the new one. And whilst doing so, we thought, well, we'll put in brand new temperature sensor, just in case that was something that was playing up. And you'll also see down here as well, it's a nice blue pipe, and there's one down here too, because I got an upgraded intercooler. I thought, well, I'm going to do it, we may as well upgrade a few of the bits that are in there as well. So it's got a new big intercooler, a nice thick one, which will help with the flow, and new radiator in there as well. So yeah, went to town on it. All went well for a minute or two, and then it fired up straight away, and we were really pleased with that. Sounded sweet as a nut. Then we started getting some more issues, so I'll now tell you what they are. Okay, so the developing issue, or the issue that developed after having all the engine and everything all sorted, was that it didn't want to start. It would just, ignition would come on, lights and everything like that, and it would crank and crank and crank, and it would never want to fire up. On the very, very rare occasion that it did want to fire up, it would only run for about 25 seconds or so, and then cut out, and it would fluctuate on the revs, and it wouldn't settle or anything like that, and even if you were revving it up, it would still cut out. So I'm thinking, well, I don't think that's anything to do with the engine, only because when it was running, you know, there's an engine in a very, very simplistic way should just continue to run, considering it's got fuel and a compression, which it does. So I was thinking, well, it's got to be more electrical then. So we did a lot of wire fiddling and earthing, and I've replaced the battery and did all of that because I thought, well, it has been sat for a while waiting for the engine to be done. But then it turned out to be, the good thing is about any of these kind of trucks and cars and things, because there is such a following and they're not necessarily renowned to be that reliable, most likely someone's had the issue before you have and posted about it online. So spent ages and ages trawling through forums and everything like that. I managed to find someone who was incredibly helpful because they'd had the exact issue before. So what it is underneath this seat. That there. You have to excuse the absolute state of my truck. Been using it every day. And I have 2 dogs. So underneath here is a load of electricals with relays and everything like that, and more importantly these 2 relays here. So one of them is your starter motor and the other one's your relay for an ECU, of which I replaced those relays and also replaced the junction boxes that are underneath as well with all the connections and everything, and that seemed to have solved my issue because it seemed to be that they were faulty. Well, there's no other way about it, is there? The relay wasn't working right and the connections were a bit dirty and everything like that. So it now starts every time, which is fantastic. It runs, the engine stays running, and it drives well. I still have an issue though. This is one that we think is maybe a little bit more beyond our capabilities, and we're going to try and take it to somewhere. Well, we've got it booked in, but he couldn't see it for another couple of weeks. But I thought I'll do this video just to give a quick update before it goes into there, and I'll explain what that issue is now. Right, so we're in the truck. Keys are in the ignition. I'm going to turn it on and you'll immediately see that temperature gauge goes darting straight up to the top. But I can fire it up, engine runs, sounds as sweet as a nut. That temperature gauge will stay at the top. It's only very recently become consistent that it's continuously at the top. It used to be that on a cold start it would start down the bottom, and then I'd have my OBD plugged in and I'd monitor the temperature, and when it got to about 75 degrees it would then, the temperature gauge itself would shoot straight up to the top. It thinks it's 215 degrees, but clearly it's not, otherwise it wouldn't run, it would just seize up. And yet now, it doesn't matter when you start it, it's cold as you like, first thing in the morning, and it's still, the temperature gauge goes straight up to the red. So that is an ongoing issue. It doesn't necessarily drive as well as it should, although it doesn't go into like a restricted performance or limp home mode. I think it's altering the fueling a little bit because I tend to find that my exhaust tip is actually got quite a, it was full of black soot, which could almost be an indication that it's over fueling and it's not burning the diesel that it should. But yeah, it's a very odd one. I mean, it still drives as it should. I'm still using it daily. I've even towed with it and it tows okay, but it's not as powerful as what it should be. So yeah, that is what it's got to go in for. I'm of the mindset that it's to do with the ECU. I've actually had the multimeter plugged into the temperature sensor, because all it is, the temperature sensor, it's actually a, it's not reading the temperature of the liquid, it's reading the temperature of the cylinder head. So it's a bit of a weird one, but that's the way that they did it. And it has 2 wires coming from it, and from those wires you can measure resistance. And the resistance it was reading was like 3.6 or something like that, which through calculations again, which I'd found on forums and stuff, that's reading that it's reading about 82 degrees. So the engine is actually running at the ordinary operating temperature, especially with that different thermostat in it. So very confusing as to why the ECU or this temperature gauge seems to think that it's 215 degrees. So it's going into a whiz with ECUs, and apparently a chap who is very much a bit of a specialist on the Defenders. So hopefully he can give some insight as to what that is. But yeah, this is just a quick video, and I'll show you in just a second how it drives. It drives absolutely fine, but just very odd. Unless one of you have had it before and you can go, actually, it's one of these. So I think it's either ECU or the actual instrument cluster itself. But the good news is this chap also does mapping. So with fresh engine, a nice recon engine, which is just about to have its 500-mile oil change, just to kind of, keep that nice and fresh, bigger intercooler, better thermostat, and all the usual bits that I've already been through. He does remapping, and I'm hoping that with all of those bits, we can get a bit more power out of this engine. But yeah, that's going to be an ongoing thing, of course. But yeah, we'll go for a quick spin. So here we are, look, driving along, no lights on the dash or anything like that. Temperature gauge is obviously still up in the top of the red, but it seems to drive okay. It's definitely not in a restricted performance, but it doesn't feel as punchy as it should. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can get it sorted, maybe even give it a bit of a remap to give it some more power, which would be quite good, because obviously, as we all know, the standard power isn't great. So I'm hoping that a remap can sort that out with everything that's been done. It's costed me an arm and a leg to do it, it's fair to say, and there have been times where I've not been driving this because it's been in the garage having the work done, and I've been driving something else, and I just think, oh, you know, I'm just going to get rid of it. I've had enough of it. It seems to be in the workshops more than I'm driving it and all of that, all the usual bits, and then I see it and I go, God, it does look cool though, doesn't it? It's a really cool looking truck. It's perfect for what I want in terms of the towing side of things. I can put the dogs into the back and not have to worry about it. And I am a countryside boy. I live in the countryside, and this is a cool truck to have. It always gets a load of compliments wherever you go, and I always say the usual, it looks cooler than it drives, but I'm hoping that will soon flip if we can get on top of this issue. But in terms of cost, I mean, with everything that's gone into it and all the new parts, including what I mentioned in the last video as well, with the transfer case and half shafts and all that, I'm probably over £5 into it, which is a lot of money. But these are weird trucks though, because you put all of that money into it, and if I was to sell it, they're all great selling points for the next person. For your ordinary road going car, like a BMW 4 Series that's in front of me now, if you were to put a new engine into that, it would almost put people off buying it, because they'd be like, well, you know, why would you put a new engine into a 4 Series? It must be that there was something really wrong with it. But with Defenders, it almost seems like a given that at some point it's going to have a new engine. So this has obviously got the Recon engine. Didn't really think about doing anything other than the 2.4, because I don't think it's a bad engine. I really don't. I know the TD5 is the one that a lot of people will certainly go for, but I wanted the usability of the 6-speed gearbox, the better seats, the aircon and heated seats, just a little bit more like the more modern Defender that I could at the time. So there have been at points where I think, why have I done this? I could just be in a much nicer, newer Land Rover / Range Rover and be done with it. But as I say, every time I see it and every time I do drive it, I just think, like, it is a really cool car. And yeah, what possesses me to keep going with it, I don't know. It's almost like it feels like, oh, surely this has got to be the last hurdle, and then you fix that and something else goes wrong again. No, but it's okay though, because this is the last hurdle, and then it'll be the truck of my dreams. To be fair though, I mean, it is doing a damn sight better than when I first bought it. When I first bought it, transfer case was knackered, engine was obviously knackered, but I hadn't realised it at that point, and all the other bits. So it doesn't leak. I know the chassis is really solid. It gets wax oiled every year and has done. I've got receipt of that, which is really good. So it seems like they've looked after it in terms of the usual bits that go, apart from the engine, which is a bit of a shame. But I've kind of seen to that. So the chassis is really good, the bulkhead's really good, the truck itself, it's not in bad condition, it's the right colour for my company and I really like it. Something about it that I just have this attachment to this truck that I can't seem to give up on it. And even though everyone's telling me that I probably should at this point, I just can't seem to bring myself to do it. So I'm going to keep on going with it in the hopes that I have some really good results of it in the end, and eventually I'm able to enjoy the truck as intended, get some new headlights, because these are the standard headlights and they're rubbish, especially this time of year when it's getting dark early still, and maybe get a new roof rack, because the roof rack that's on it, it's structurally sound but it is old and it is rusty, so a bit tatty. So yeah, stick with it. Oh, I'm certainly sticking with it. It's me that's taking on the financial burden, but I'm going to keep going. So I shall do another video once it's been in. Hopefully it would have had a remap at that point as well, and we'll see some vast improvements. But thank you once again for watching. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot. And yeah, show us your Defenders. Show us if you've had any of these kind of issues and what the solutions were, or am I just being mad in keeping it on the road? But yeah, hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much.